Hi everyone, my name's Alex and welcome back to another video. This video is going to be about how to use Notion to study from, sort of more of an in-depth guide. Like I've done two videos previously, one about how to set up Notion and one was just sort of how I study in general. But this one is going to be much more sort of focused on the process of actually studying and how I use Notion to do that in the different parts of my degree, so that'll be lectures and on placement basically. So yeah, the first part of the video is going to be focused on how to use Notion and questions in lectures. Obviously it's going to be focused more on online lectures because most people at most unis have completely online lectures. And then the second part of the video is going to be talking about how to use sort of writing questions and Notion on placement as well, which is a really important aspect of learning in medical school. So the main focus of lectures is the understanding part of it, because if you understand it when it's initially delivered, then you can then go and learn it afterwards. So if you take one thing from this, it's that lectures are all about the understanding. So we're going to go on the basis that there's two kinds of lectures. So the first kind of lecture is one that you can pause, so you can sort of go through it at your own pace, such as this PowerPoint, for example. And the second type of lecture is one that you can't pause. So this might be a video that won't let you pause it, or a Zoom lecture or something of that nature, or a real life lecture. So in both of them, you ideally need to pre-read either the lecture slides or roughly know what might come up in the lecture, so you can make some subheadings and sort of have a broad understanding of what might come up. So in this lecture, it's pretty much done for us. So these are the subheadings here. So as you can see in my notes, these are the first things I write down are the subheadings. So these all match up. So there's 4 here, and I didn't include the references. So what we do here is, for lectures that you can pause, I will write questions throughout the lecture from the slides and from the narration and fill in the answers as we go. So we only need to go through the lecture once, so we got one cycle through the lecture and we do the questions and the answers at the same time. And the other type of lecture, so ones that you can't pause, what we'll do instead with that is to just write the questions. If you don't have time to write the questions because they're going through it quite quickly, then just focus on the understanding and make sure you process it and really think about what's going on. Because there's no point in sitting there writing stuff down and then you come back to it later on and you think, well, what the hell was it actually about? Like, and not understanding any of it. So understanding the content is really the main point I'm trying to drive home here. So yeah, quick summary: if it's a lecture that you can pause, write the questions and the answers as you go along. If it's a lecture that you can't pause, just write the questions. So if you've just written the questions for it, after the lecture you need to go and fill out the answers. So this is a good sort of first round of sort of repetition of answering the questions. You can use PowerPoint slides, use Google textbooks, whatever, just to fill out the answers to the questions. And then you should end up with a question bank that looks roughly like this, or similar to this, obviously without the colour over it. So you'll have little toggles that you can open with questions and then answers underneath. So it is important that you have subheadings in these, otherwise you will just have a random collection of questions that in themselves are probably good for recall, but then in the broad picture of things they don't really make much sense. So the subheadings are really important. So the second aspect of teaching that I'm going to talk about is placement. So placement is a really good chance to consolidate your learning and to pick up on any extra clinical skills and applications, and to understand how your lecture teaching sort of works in the real world, and you'll get an extra bit of clinically relevant context with it as well. So there's 3 main things you need to do in order of importance. So the first thing is just to be present and listen and thoroughly understand everything that you're going through in teaching, in clinics, in simulation, on wards or in theatres. So rather than just say if you hear something new, rather than just sort of hearing the word, try and work out how it works, try to understand it as best you can and really think hard about it, because you thinking hard about something and actually making sure you understand it was the first step to learning it. And if you just sort of think of a word or hear a word and don't really think about it much or process it much, it will just go out your brain straight away and you'll never remember it again. So the second most important thing is to write down questions for things that you hear that are new. So obviously don't take your laptop into clinics, because that's just a little bit disrespectful. And you can't take your laptop onto walls in theatres and stuff. Maybe in teaching session, yeah, but I like to keep it all either in a notebook or on Notability on my iPad. So write down what you don't understand as a question. Make sure this doesn't lead to you just sitting in a clinic writing reams and reams of stuff, because then you'll forget the first point, which is just to be present and listen and thoroughly understand everything. So make sure you don't fall into that, but just write down what you don't understand. The third thing you need to do is to go away and answer the questions that you've written down for yourself. So if you don't understand something, this is a really good chance to ask the doctor or nurse who you're with at the end of a clinic, or just between patients or something, to explain something. And if you feel like you don't need it explaining, but it's still something new or something you feel like you need to know, then you can just go away after the session and write the answer for it using Google, textbooks, etc. So this is just an example of one day on placement that I had last week, Friday. So I had defibrillator training in the morning, and then a teaching session and SimMan, so like a simulation suite, in the afternoon. So on the left, so all over here, we've got all the questions that I wrote down. The red ones are the ones that I still wasn't sure about afterwards, which I'm in the process of finding the answers to. Yeah, so on the left are the questions, and on the right are answers. So you can see I've got a fair amount of questions and stuff from the teaching session, and then I've gone through and answered them all down here as briefly as I can. And if I can do it from memory, then great. If not, then yeah, I've gone away and researched them. So once you've written down all your questions and all of your answers, now is time to transfer them onto Notion. And these are a selection of questions from placement. So the ones that aren't here are incorporated into these lectures. So the lectures that I've got throughout the past however long, so the past 4 weeks of teaching that we've had. Because obviously if they fit in with a lecture, then you might as well put them in with the lecture, so that when you go through the lecture, you're learning it. So now we've got this big bank of questions, we need to think about going through them. So let's go back to that physiology lecture up here. So you might be able to see, I don't know how well it comes up on camera or on the screen recording, that they are colour-coded. And up here is the lecturer, the score, how well I did on them, on the questions when I went through them, the date I last went through them, and sort of a tag, so basically like folders. Green highlighted is I've got it all right. Yellow, which I don't know if you can see, they're ones that I've got mostly right or partially right, but still wasn't too confident on. And then these ones, you can't see it very well, these ones are red. These are the ones that I have got mostly wrong or wasn't too confident on and definitely need to go over again. So, and then over here you can see roughly how well I did. So obviously if it's mostly green, that's going to be, I'm going to be able to click on excellent, mostly yellow, okay, and mostly red, bad. If it's a combination of the two, you can add extra ones in, so you can have a combination of all three. On Notion you can also put emojis with, or like little icons with each lecture. So the hearts aren't just there for decoration, these are how well I've done on the lectures. You can see I've reviewed these lectures from Stroke Week and done okay on all of them. So it's a nice visual representation of how well you did when you reviewed it, and then you can work out which ones you need to go through again and how soon. So for example, if this one was, where's red, then I'd know that I need to go through this lecture soon, and if this one was green, then I know I don't need to go through that one again for a while. So you may notice I'm in a different top and there's a lot of mess on my desk now. That's because this main camera that I'm shooting on now and that I was shooting on earlier died halfway through, and I didn't realise, which is a shame. A quick summary: so there's two different ways you can study for lectures. So for lectures that you can pause it, you can fill out the answers for the questions as you go along, and lectures where you can't pause it, just focus on trying to get the questions down if you can, and if not, just focus on the understanding. And for placement, just remember the number one thing is to be present and understand it and engage with what's going on rather than writing the questions down. But if you can write the questions down, brilliant. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, found it useful or whatever, please give it a like and consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.